Most people think tension comes from big problems, arguments, deadlines, unexpected crises. Those are easy to blame. But the strange truth is that the tightness many people carry every day rarely comes from dramatic events. It comes from quieter things. Small moments the body never got the chance to release. A careless comment that lingered longer than it should. A message that felt colder than expected. The subtle sting of being misunderstood, ignored, or quietly disappointed. None of these moments seem large enough to matter, and yet the body remembers them all. So people move through their days with something they barely notice. Their shoulders lift slightly, their breathing becomes shallow without meaning to, and somewhere inside, a quiet knot begins to form. Here's the surprising part most people never hear. Calm isn't something you create by trying harder. It isn't forced through discipline or control. More often, calm appears the moment you stop ignoring what your body has been holding. Because beneath the noise of everyday life, your body has been carrying a silent rope, a rope woven from unspoken tension, swallowed reactions and feelings that never had a safe place to land. And the tighter you pull against it, the tighter it becomes. But there's another way, one that's far simpler than most people expect. A quiet way of noticing the rope, loosening it slowly, and letting your body remember how to rest again. In this story, you'll meet someone who carried that invisible rope for years without realizing it. Until one ordinary afternoon, a small moment of awareness began to loosen the first knot. And what happened next changed the way he carried every difficult moment in his life. Because sometimes, the calm you've been searching for has been waiting quietly beneath the tension all along. Morning often arrived quietly for Elias, but his body rarely noticed the peace of it. Even before the sun stretched across the windowsill, something inside him already felt tight, not pain exactly, more like a subtle pulling, as if an invisible rope were wound gently around his chest. He'd sip his coffee, glance at the day ahead, and shrug it off. Still, somewhere beneath the ordinary rhythm of the morning, that quiet tension lingered. It wasn't caused by anything dramatic. No shouting arguments, no terrible news, nothing that would make someone say, "Ah, that explains it." Yet his shoulders carried a faint heaviness, and his thoughts moved like cautious footsteps across thin ice. Strange, really, how a day could begin peacefully and still feel crowded inside, as if his mind had been holding its breath all night. Sometimes it appeared while he was answering a message, other times when someone spoke a careless word that lingered longer than it should. A tiny criticism here, a moment of rejection there, the quiet sting of being overlooked. None of it seemed big enough to explain the weight that followed him. And yet the rope inside him tightened, twist by silent twist. He tried to ignore it, of course. Most people do. After all, who has time to pause every time the body whispers something uneasy? So he kept moving, brushing the feeling aside like dust from a jacket sleeve. But the rope didn't loosen. It simply waited. By midday, Elias often felt oddly tired, though he hadn't done much at all. He'd rubbed the back of his neck, wondering why calm felt so far away. The world around him seemed normal. Cars passing, conversations humming, sunlight drifting across the pavement. Yet inside, the rope remained wound tight, quiet, but persistent. A small knot of tension no one else could see. Now and then he wondered if everyone lived like this. Maybe this quiet pressure was just part of being an adult. People carried responsibilities, expectations, memories of words that landed a little too sharply. Perhaps everyone walked around with their own invisible rope. If so, nobody talked about it. The oddest part was the confusion. Elias couldn't point to a single cause. Nothing had gone terribly wrong, and yet calm felt just out of reach, like a door slightly ajar but never quite open. He'd sigh, stretch his shoulders, and tell himself it would pass. But the rope stayed. And somewhere beneath the quiet tension of those ordinary days, a gentle question waited patiently. What if the tightness wasn't random at all? What if the body had been holding something the mind never stopped to hear? Elias didn't know it yet, but the rope around his chest had a story, and sooner or later someone would help him notice it. A few days later, Elias noticed something peculiar. The rope around his chest didn't tighten only during difficult moments. Sometimes it pulled slightly when nothing at all was happening, while waiting in line or staring quietly out a window. It was as if the tension had learned to live there, quietly settling in like an uninvited guest. And the more he ignored it, the more comfortable it seemed to become. At first he treated it the way most people treat discomfort, A small distraction here, a deeper breath there, perhaps a quick scroll through his phone. Little escapes that helped for a moment, though the relief never stayed long. The rope would loosen for a breath or two, then gently pull tight again. Not cruelly, just persistently. What puzzled him most was how invisible it all felt. To anyone watching, Elias appeared calm enough. He spoke politely, nodded in conversations, even laughed when someone told a decent joke. Yet beneath the surface, the rope remained wound around him, a quiet reminder that something inside had not been heard. One afternoon, while sitting alone on a park bench, he rested his hand over his chest. Not for any grand reason, just a small instinct, almost accidental. For a moment, he stopped trying to fix anything. He simply noticed the tightness, and strangely, the rope seemed to soften, just a little. That tiny shift surprised him. He hadn't pushed the feeling away. He hadn't tried to analyze it or explain it. He had simply allowed himself to notice it, the way one notices the wind brushing past their sleeve. And somehow that gentle awareness created space. It made him wonder about something most people overlook. Maybe tension wasn't stubborn because it was strong. Maybe it held on because it had never been acknowledged. Like a knot tied in a rope that tightens when pulled, but loosens when handled patiently. A curious thought, really. Elias began to suspect that calm wasn't something you forced into existence. Perhaps it had always been there, quietly waiting beneath the tightness. And maybe the rope itself wasn't an enemy at all. Perhaps it was simply carrying things the mind had rushed past too quickly. Unspoken worries, forgotten disappointments, quiet moments of shame. The thought lingered gently in his mind as the afternoon light shifted across the park. If tension softened when it was noticed, then perhaps the rope around his chest had been waiting for something simple all along. Not force, just attention. Most people who met Elias would have said he seemed steady. Not overly cheerful, not gloomy either. Just the sort of person who handled life quietly. He showed up on time, answered kindly, and rarely raised his voice. If tension lived inside him, it stayed well hidden. After all, some ropes are worn beneath the coat, where no one notices. For years he had convinced himself that the tightness was normal. Deadlines came and went. Conversations turned awkward now and then. Wasn't that simply life? So whenever the rope pulled tighter around his chest, he shrugged and carried on. Just a long day, he'd mutter to himself, stretching his neck. But the rope seemed to hear those words and quietly pull another loop. Certain moments made it worse, though he rarely admitted it. A careless remark from a colleague would echo longer than expected. A message left unanswered could sit heavily in his thoughts. Even a small look of disappointment from someone he respected felt like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples traveled inward, tightening the rope without warning. Oddly enough, Elias feared something more than the tension itself. He feared what might happen if he slowed down enough to feel it fully. What if the rope wasn't just a small knot? What if it held years of quiet strain, carefully tucked away beneath routines and polite smiles? That possibility made him keep moving, so he filled his days with activity. Not frantic busyness, nothing dramatic like that. Just enough movement to stay ahead of the silence. Errands, conversations, background noise, the gentle hum of everyday life. Anything that kept him from sitting too long with the rope. But the body has its own timing. One evening, while washing dishes after a long day, Elias paused mid-motion. The rope around his chest tightened suddenly, as though someone had given it a slow twist. He leaned against the counter, breathing shallowly, unsure why such a simple moment felt heavy. The water kept running quietly in the sink. He waited for the feeling to pass the way it usually did, yet this time it lingered longer than expected. For a brief second, a strange thought crossed his mind. Maybe the rope wasn't tightening randomly at all. Maybe it was asking to be noticed. And somewhere beyond that quiet kitchen, someone had already noticed it. Not the rope itself, of course, but the subtle way Elias carried it. The slightly tense shoulders, the careful breathing, the calm that looked just a little too practiced. Soon enough, someone patient would cross his path, someone who understood ropes like these. The rope had always been there, though Elias hadn't truly looked at it before. Not with his eyes, of course. This was the sort of rope a person feels rather than sees. It wrapped quietly around his chest, looping once, then again, like a knot tied by invisible hands. Each day added another small twist. Nothing dramatic, just steady tightening. At first the rope had been loose, almost gentle. Years ago it had felt more like a light thread than a binding cord. But with every swallowed frustration, every unspoken hurt. The fibers thickened. Words he didn't say, reactions he buried, disappointments he brushed aside. All of them seemed to weave themselves into the rope. Curiously, the rope never tightened all at once. It worked slowly, patiently, like ivy wrapping around an old wall. A harsh comment here, an awkward silence there, the quiet ache of feeling misunderstood. None of those moments seemed large enough to matter, yet the rope remembered them all. Sometimes Elias imagined what the rope might look like if it were visible. Perhaps it would appear worn and slightly frayed from years of being pulled. Or maybe it would gleam like polished cord, carefully wound and impossibly tight. Either way, it had grown stubborn with time. Neglect had made it strong. Ignoring it, strangely enough, only seemed to strengthen the knots. The more he told himself, "It's nothing," the firmer the loops became, like a rope left out in the rain, tightening as it dried beneath the sun. His chest would stiffen, his breathing would shorten slightly, and still he carried on as if nothing had changed. There were moments, though, when the rope made itself impossible to forget. A sharp sigh during a tense conversation, a sudden heaviness after reading a message that felt colder than expected, or that quiet pressure late at night when the world finally slowed down. Those were the moments the rope pulled hardest. What Elias didn't yet understand was that the rope wasn't trying to trap him. It was holding everything he hadn't allowed himself to feel, like a bundle of unsent letters tied together with careful knots. The rope had simply been doing its job, carrying what the mind had set aside. But ropes behave in a curious way. Pull them harder, and the knots tighten. Handle them patiently, though, and sometimes they begin to loosen on their own. Elias didn't know this yet. Soon, someone would show him. A few mornings later, Elias found himself returning to the same quiet park bench. Not because he had planned to, exactly. It just seemed like a place where the rope tugged a little less. The trees leaned gently over the path, and the air carried that soft stillness parks seemed to keep for themselves. He sat down, shoulders slightly tense as usual, and that was when someone else noticed. An older man was watering a small row of plants nearby. Nothing remarkable about him at first glance. Plain clothes, slow movements, the calm patience of someone who wasn't rushing anywhere. Yet after a moment, the man looked up and smiled faintly. Not the polite kind of smile people exchange out of habit. The kind that quietly says, "I see something you might not have noticed. You carry your shoulders like someone holding a heavy rope," the man said gently. The words startled Elias more than he expected. He shifted slightly on the bench, almost embarrassed, as though the invisible rope had suddenly become visible after all. "Just tired, I suppose," Elias replied with a small shrug. The man nodded, watering the plants without hurry. "Tiredness has many disguises," the man said after a moment. "Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's worry, and sometimes—" He paused, adjusting the flow of water carefully. "It's a rope that's been pulled tight for too long." His voice carried no judgment, only quiet understanding. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The rope around his chest shifted slightly, reacting to the words. How would someone even loosen a rope like that? He asked, half curious, half skeptical. The man chuckled softly, the kind of warm laugh that carried no pressure. "Ropes rarely loosen when you fight them." Instead of answering further, the man set the watering can aside and sat on the other end of the bench. For a moment he simply breathed slowly, his shoulders relaxed, his posture easy. Elias noticed something unusual. Being near him felt quieter somehow, as if the air itself had slowed down. "Most ropes tighten because they never feel safe enough to loosen," the man said gently. "They've been holding things for a long time." He glanced toward Elias, not intensely, just kindly. "So they stay firm, just in case." The words settled softly in the space between them. Elias looked down at his hands, feeling the familiar tension across his chest. The rope was still there, of course, but for the first time, he sensed that someone understood it without needing explanation. That simple recognition seemed to soften something inside him, and the man beside him appeared to know exactly where to begin next. For a little while, neither of them spoke. The park moved gently around them, leaves whispering, distant footsteps on the path. The older man rested his hands loosely on his knees, breathing as though time had slowed for him alone. Elias noticed the rhythm of it without meaning to. In and out, slow and untroubled. After a moment, the man spoke again, almost as if continuing a conversation that had started long ago. "Most people try to cut their rope," he said quietly. "They pull at it, distract themselves, pretend it isn't there. He tilted his head slightly, thoughtful. But ropes don't respond well to being fought. Elias gave a faint, skeptical smile. So what then? Just live with it forever? The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. No, no. Ropes aren't meant to stay tight forever. He reached down and picked up a short piece of gardening cord lying near the bench. Look here, he said, holding the cord loosely between his fingers. He twisted it slowly, forming a small knot. If I pull against this knot hard enough, it tightens. He tugged once to demonstrate, and the knot cinched stubbornly. But if I give it space? The man gently loosened his grip and worked the cord with patient fingers. No rushing, no force, just careful attention. Little by little, the knot softened. Elias watched, surprised by how easily it began to give. It wasn't strength that loosened it. It was patience. The body is much the same. The man continued softly. Tension hides in small places. Your shoulders, your breath, your jaw. He tapped lightly at his own chest. When you notice it kindly, the rope realizes it doesn't have to guard everything alone. He showed Elias a small practice then. Place your hand here, he said, resting his palm over his heart. Take one slow breath and simply notice where the rope feels tight. No fixing, no forcing, just noticing. Elias tried it, a bit awkwardly. His breath moved slowly and his shoulders lowered by a fraction. The rope didn't vanish, of course, but it loosened a thread, just enough to feel the difference, and that small shift stirred something hopeful inside him. The older man smiled faintly, as though he had seen this moment many times before. See, he said gently, calm isn't something you chase. He paused, letting the words settle. It's something that returns when the rope finally feels safe enough to loosen. After that afternoon, Elias didn't suddenly become a different person. The rope around his chest was still there the next morning, just as familiar as ever. But something subtle had shifted. Instead of ignoring the tightness, he noticed it, almost like greeting an old companion. Ah, there you are again, he murmured once, half amused. The first few times felt awkward. He would pause for a moment, place a hand lightly over his chest, and take one slow breath. Nothing dramatic happened. The rope didn't fall away or unravel all at once. But sometimes, just sometimes, the knot softened a little. He began catching the tension in small moments. When someone spoke sharply during a conversation, when a message arrived that sounded colder than expected, or when that familiar wave of loneliness crept in during quiet evenings. Instead of pushing it away, he simply noticed the rope tightening. Then he would do the simplest thing the mentor had shown him. One slow breath, a quiet awareness of where the rope pressed the most. Sometimes he imagined his fingers gently loosening a knot that no one else could see. A tiny act, hardly noticeable from the outside. To his surprise, relief didn't always arrive as calm. Sometimes it came as a quiet sigh, other times as a sudden warmth in his chest, or even a brief sting behind his eyes. Once or twice he found himself laughing softly at how tightly he'd been holding things. The rope seemed to release little stories each time it loosened. Days passed and the rope began to feel different. Still present, yes, but no longer rigid. Like a cord that had been stretched in sunlight, becoming more flexible with each passing hour. Elias could feel its weight, but it no longer pulled quite so harshly. The knots had started to breathe, and in that slow transformation, he discovered something unexpected. The rope had never truly been the enemy. It had simply been carrying what he had never paused to feel. Now that he listened, the rope didn't need to hold everything so tightly. It could loosen, little by little. Yet the real test of this quiet change had not arrived yet. Soon enough, life would bring one of those moments that usually pulled the rope tight again. A moment of pressure, sharp words, or sudden disappointment, and Elias would discover whether the rope truly knew how to loosen now. The moment arrived sooner than Elias expected. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that usually passed without much notice. He was speaking with a colleague when a sharp comment slipped into the conversation. Not loud, not dramatic, just one of those careless remarks that tends to linger. And immediately the rope around his chest pulled tight. For a split second, his old habit rushed forward, the familiar urge to react, to defend himself, to replay the words again and again. He felt the rope twist sharply, the way it always had in moments like this. But then something different happened. He remembered the quiet bench in the park. Instead of responding right away, Elias paused. Just for a breath, no one around him even noticed. His hand rested lightly against his chest as he inhaled slowly. He imagined his fingers touching the rope, feeling where the knot had tightened, and he gave it the smallest bit of space. The shift was subtle, almost invisible. The rope loosened just enough for the air to move more freely through his chest. His thoughts slowed, like ripples settling on still water. By the time he spoke again, his voice carried none of the sharpness the moment had invited, only calm clarity. Something curious happened then. The tension that might have filled the conversation never quite arrived. His colleague's tone softened almost immediately, as if the calm had quietly changed the room. The moment passed like a cloud drifting across the sun. No storm, no lingering bitterness. Later that evening, Elias thought about it while walking home. The rope still existed, of course, but now it felt less like a trap and more like a signal, a gentle messenger. Whenever it tightened, it was simply asking to be noticed. Nothing more complicated than that. He practiced again the next day, while waiting at a red light, while reading a message that stirred a faint disappointment, while sitting quietly before sleep. Each time, he paused, breathed, and loosened one small knot, and gradually, life around him began to feel lighter, not because difficult moments had disappeared, but because the rope no longer controlled how tightly he carried them. Calm had started to return in quiet, unexpected ways, and soon, Elias would realize something even deeper about the rope he had been carrying all along. Not long after, Elias returned to the park bench again. The same trees leaned overhead, and the same quiet breeze wandered through the leaves. The older man was there too, tending the small plants with patient hands. When he saw Elias, he gave a knowing smile. "Your rope looks lighter today," he said softly. Elias sat beside him and nodded. "It still tightens sometimes," he admitted, "but now I notice it sooner." The man chuckled warmly, setting the watering can aside. "That's usually where the real change begins." After a moment, the man turned slightly toward him. "You know," he said gently, "most people carry their rope all day without ever feeling it." He tapped the bench lightly with his fingers. "So let me show you something simple they can try right now." His voice carried that same calm patience as before. "First," he said, "pause for just a moment, wherever you are, even if it's only for one quiet breath." Then he placed his hand over his chest again, the way he had shown before. "Now notice where your rope feels tight. Your shoulders, your jaw, your chest, wherever it's holding. Next," he continued, "take one slow breath in. Not a forced breath, just a gentle one. And as you breathe out, imagine your fingers loosening a single knot in the rope. You don't need to untie the whole thing. Just one small knot is enough." Elias followed along quietly, breathing in and then out. For a moment, he imagined the rope softening slightly around his chest, not disappearing, just relaxing its grip. The difference was small, but unmistakable. "You can do this anywhere," the man added. "In the middle of a conversation, while reading a message, or standing in a long line. One breath, one small knot loosened." He smiled kindly. "The rope understands patience." Elias sat there for a moment longer, letting the quiet settle in his chest. The rope felt looser than it had in years, and as he watched the breeze move gently through the trees, he began to understand something important. Perhaps calm had never been missing at all. Perhaps it had simply been waiting beneath the rope. The seasons shifted slowly after that. Leaves changed color, the air grew cooler, and Elias continued walking the same quiet paths through the park. The rope around his chest was still part of his life, though it no longer felt like a burden he had to fight. It had become something different now, a quiet reminder to listen. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the trees, he noticed something surprising. His breath moved freely, his shoulders rested easily, and the rope felt loose. Not gone, just resting gently instead of pulling tight. Like a cord finally laid down after years of being carried. For a moment, he simply stood there, taking in the calm. It dawned on him then that calm had never been something he needed to create. It had always been there, quietly waiting beneath the tension he carried. The rope had only been holding the feelings he had rushed past. Little disappointments, quiet fears, words that lingered longer than they should. Now that they were seen, the rope didn't need to hold them so tightly. The older man once said something that Elias now understood fully. Ropes tighten when they think they must carry everything alone. But when someone pauses, breathes, and listens kindly, the rope realizes it can rest. No cutting, no force, no struggle required, just patient attention. From then on, Elias moved through life a little differently. When a tense moment appeared, and they always did, he noticed the rope first. One breath, one small softening of the knot, and often that was enough to let the moment pass without weighing him down. A quiet skill no one else could see. Sometimes he would sit again on the same park bench, watching people walk by. Many of them carried their own invisible ropes, though they didn't seem aware of them yet. He felt no urge to interrupt their day or explain anything. Everyone finds their moment eventually. The rope always knows when someone is ready to listen. And in the quiet stillness of those evenings, Elias would rest a hand over his chest. The rope, once so tight, now lay loose and light within him. The breeze moved softly through the trees, as if echoing the same gentle truth. Peace had never been far away. It had simply been waiting beneath the knots.